So today, we're going to dive into a really pivotal time in the history of the Indian subcontinent. It's a period of incredible change, but what's so fascinating is that it wasn't driven by big-shot emperors in their palaces. Nope, it was driven by everyday people out in the villages and in their workshops.
Just try to picture this for a second. Imagine the intense heat from the fire, the constant noise, that rhythmic clang of a hammer hitting hot metal. This blacksmith shop, this is pretty much where our whole story kicks off. It's a scene of pure creation and transformation.
See, what was being forged in that fire wasn't just a tool. In a way, it was the future itself. And it brings up this huge question, right? How can something so seemingly small, like a metal axe or a plowshare, completely reshape an entire civilization?
To get to the bottom of that, we need to zoom in on a very specific moment in time. And we're not talking about a great unified empire here. We're actually looking at the crucial 500 years that happened between two of them. Think of it like a bridge, connecting one massive era to the next.
Okay, so take a look at this timeline. After the gigantic Mauryan Empire collapsed around 1850 BCE, there wasn't another empire on that same scale for about 500 years. Not until the Guptas came along. I mean, that's a huge gap in time.
For a long time, some historians would look at this 500-year period and just see, well, a void, a kind of dark age without a strong central ruler. But man, that totally misses the real story. The real action was happening from the ground up. It was an age of incredible innovation and growth right at the local level.
And what was the engine behind all that innovation? It was iron. Now, iron had been around for a bit, sure, but this was the period where its use absolutely exploded, especially in farming. And it fundamentally changed how people lived and worked the land.
And this chart just lays it out so clearly. Before iron, you're using a wooden plow. Trying to farm heavy soil was this back-breaking, super inefficient job. But then you introduce an iron plowshare, and suddenly farmers could till way more land and do it much more deeply. And that led directly to a massive boom in food production.
Really, it all came down to two key game-changing tools. First, you've got the iron axe. This let people clear thick forests and open up brand new land for farming. And second, the iron plowshare, which made all that land way, way more productive.
But it wasn't just about the tools. It was also about water. A really interesting cycle started to pop up. Kings needed money for their armies, so they demanded taxes from farmers. To pay those taxes, farmers had to grow more crops. So the kings realized, hey, if we invest in things like canals, wells, and tanks, production will go up. And it did. It became a win-win that just kept fueling more and more growth.
So with all this change in technology and food production, the social fabric of the villages started to change too. A whole new social order took shape. So let's ask, who exactly was living in these villages?
Well, a new kind of social ladder started to form. In both the north and the south, you basically had three main groups. At the top, you had the large landowners, who were often really powerful. Then came the smaller, independent farmers. And at the bottom were the landless workers or slaves who had to work on other people's land. It's really cool to see the different names, Grandma Bojaka up north, Vedalar down south, but the basic structure was pretty similar.
Now you might be wondering, how on earth do we know these specific Tamil names? Well, our main source is the incredible Sangam literature. These are the earliest writings we have in the Tamil language, put together by assemblies of poets, and they give us this priceless window into what society was like back then.
But of course, these villages weren't just farmers. Not at all. They were bustling little communities filled with skilled craftspeople. Remember our blacksmith from the beginning? Well, he had neighbors. Potters, carpenters, weavers, all of them were essential to the village economy.
Okay, so what happens when your villages start producing way more food than they actually need to eat? That surplus, well, that's the seed from which something new begins to grow. Thriving towns. The success in the villages was the direct fuel for the rise of cities.
It really boils down to a super simple but really powerful formula. When you have extra food, it means not everybody has to be a farmer anymore. This frees people up to specialize in other jobs, to gather in bigger groups, and to create these bustling towns.
So how do we piece all of this together? Well, this is where historians basically become detectives. We sift through clues. We read stories like the Buddhist Jataka tales. We look closely at sculptures that show scenes from daily life. And we dig up artifacts like pottery. And maybe most importantly, we find coins, actual hard evidence of a brand new age of trade.
For example, there's one Jataka tale about a clever poor man. And through his story, we get this amazing glimpse into all the different jobs people had. Gardeners, potters, merchants. It's more than just a story. It's like a social document that paints this really vivid picture of the economy.
And speaking of commerce, get a load of this number, 500. That's how many years these first punch-marked coins were in use. Think about that. For something to last that long, it tells you this wasn't just some passing trend. This was a solid, widespread economic system built on currency.
Okay, so we've seen all this amazing growth happening in the villages and towns. But here's the thing, none of it happened in a bubble. All this local progress led to a world that was way more connected than it had ever been before.
And you can really see the journey here. It all starts in the village, right? With the extra food and the handmade crafts. From there, those goods move into the towns, where they're traded in the markets. And then they enter these huge trade networks that crisscross the subcontinent and even stretch out across the oceans.
I mean, the scale of this is just mind-blowing. We're talking about a network that linked the very southern tip of India with the far north, and then kept going, creating trade relationships with powerful far-off civilizations, including the Roman Empire.
Which brings us right back to where we started. During that 500-year gap between the great empires, it was the farmer with his new iron plow, the poet putting together stories, and that blacksmith at his forge. They were the ones building the future. And it leaves us with one last thing to think about. Who really shapes the course of history? The person wearing the crown or the one holding the hammer?